Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Hooked on Sports here on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and wherever you get your podcasting streaming services. My name is John Flynn, and thank you so very much for listening to today's podcast, or however you're listening, or however you are watching. Thank you for making me part of your day. Today is Tuesday, November 11th, 2025. It is the Tuesday after the end of Week 10 of the NFL season, and I've got some takes on the Steelers and on the Rams and the Seahawks and the Eagles and how I think that the balance of power in the NFC shakes up as we dive deeper into the second half of the NFL season. Everyone has exceeded more than half of their allotted schedule. So we'll get into that. I'll give you some of my takes on the Bills and the Colts and the New England Patriots, what they were able to do down in Tampa. So all that's going to tie into my recap of Week 10 in the NFL. But the main story in the sports in the sports universe right now is the firing of Brian Daboll, the head coach of the New York Football Giants, after three and a half years on the job. So, if you are a Giants fan and you watched that game against the Chicago Bears, that you had to be sick to your stomach, and Giants fans who like to jog the mental Rolodex with the way this team has been losing games for a half a generation, so that you know that this team will find a way to lose games in the fourth quarter, and the latest example of that was in Chicago on Sunday against Caleb Williams and the Bears. The Giants were up 20-10 with 4 minutes left in the game. So Caleb Williams throws a touchdown to Romo Dunze down the middle to make it 20-17. And then the Giants went 3-and-out. Jamie Gillen shanks a punt to set the Bears up in great field position. And then they take it down the field, score a touchdown. Bears wound up winning 24-20. And that was the second time this season the Giants blew a double-digit fourth quarter lead. And in fact, the Giants are 1-2 when leading by 10 points in the fourth quarter. The rest of the NFL combined is 88-1. That is beyond comical. That is beyond soul sucking, and ultimately that cost Brian Daboll his job. And I was the biggest. I was as big a defender of Brian Daboll as there was in the sports micromedia, and all that. Brian Daboll was my first choice to be the head coach of the Giants when they fired Joe Judge 4 years ago. I was the one that said keep Daboll after 2023. I said keep Daboll after 2024. So it was because it was a rough situation with the Daniel Jones contract, and the roster was a mess. So you bring him in for another year. So the scouting team tells him go see what Jackson Dart's all about. Convinces the front office that Jackson Dart is the answer for the quarterback quarterback problem for the Giants. Giants trade up in the first round to get him, pair him with Abdul Carter as first round picks, and then it was you couldn't start Jackson Dart week 1 because Andrew Thomas was still hurt, and the line is a mess without him. Thomas finally plays a healthy game week 3, but he's put in week 4. and he impresses with the win, and he's been playing strong football throughout. So, but then Jackson Dart suffered a concussion in week 10 on a design run, and who knows when he'll be able to be clear from concussion protocol. So on top of blowing leads, his inability to keep his guys healthy, his inability to win games with hard schedules. Because remember, the 2022 Giants had the easiest schedule I could remember, and they were a 9-win team. So I think Daboll winning Coach of the Year was kind of a fluke when you look at it. It was great the Giants made the playoffs. They won a playoff game in Minnesota against the Vikings. So, but Daboll couldn't overcome his shortcomings in terms of game management and getting his team buttoned up and focused and prepared on the in the ball game in all three phases of the game. And that's where that it's at, and it sucked to see Daboll go, but it took until after the debacle in Chicago where Coach Daboll lost me. So Daboll is gone. Kafka is going to take Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, is going to take over the interim head coaching duties. And for him, it's going to be a 7-game audition for him to be a full-time head coach, either with the Giants or with somebody else. So you look at that, and if you look what the Giants have, they have a star quarterback, in my opinion, in Jackson Dart. They have an elite left tackle. They have a tremendous pass rush that should be a lethal force if utilized by a competent defensive coordinator. And they'll have Malik Neighbors back next year. They'll have Cam Scatterbo back next year, and I think that it is an opportunity for the Giants to hum for a strong head coaching candidate. And who are some of the names I'm thinking for the head coach of the Giants? I'm looking at Mike McCarthy. I'm looking at Seahawks offensive coordinator Clint Kubiak. I am looking at Baltimore Ravens offensive coordinator Todd Monken. So I don't believe Lane Kiffin is going to leave Ole Miss to join the Giants as the head coach. I just don't see that happening. So with the money he's getting and how he's and how he's properly utilized in the NIL system, there now. So I know a lot of fans are gonna clamor for John Gruden, and I think Gruden would be great, but I just don't believe that that the NFL the NFL is going to want him to coach in the league after the lawsuits that were and all of the controversy that ensued with what transpired in Vegas over when he was the coach there. Actually, with Oakland and Vegas before he wound up getting fired from Vegas there. So I look this as maybe the most attractive job, and look, I am philosophically opposed to having a quarterback having as a coach come in with a soon to be second year quarterback, because you kind of have to bring in a new system with all of that. But with how Dart's been playing and the leadership he's shown, I would venture to give an exemption to that philosophy for that regard. So. And then you also have to wonder if Joe Shane is going to be a detriment to the team hiring a coach because Joe Shane's contract expires after next season, and I don't believe the Giants are going to be keen on picking up an extension on him. So how much is Joe Shane going to do? Because clearly Joe Shane has done nothing to address the run defense, which has been abysmal each of the last 5 years. So, and I do believe the root causes of the losses are from their horrible run defense. But yeah, I think with some of the undisciplined mess there. You have to look at that as well. So a lot of things to ponder for the New York Football Giants as we move along. And with the Steelers' loss to the Chargers on Sunday, I am 0-9 picking games against the spread featuring the Steelers this year. The Pittsburgh Steelers are the most inconsistent team in the NFL. And the latest example of that was after a riveting win against the Indianapolis Colts when it came into the game in Week 9 against them 7-1. They beat them. It's knocked them down to 7-2. The Steelers got crushed by the Chargers. And a Chargers team that did not have their starting tackles, and the Steelers' offense was atrocious. Aaron Rodgers barely hit 50% of his passes, threw for 161 yards, threw 2 interceptions, and took a safety in the first quarter of the game against the Chargers, and Rodgers was missing receivers. He had a wide open throws early in the game. He was not hitting on them, and the Steelers wound up losing in dreadful fashion against the Chargers, and it was 25-3 before a garbage time touchdown did that. But there is a legit possibility that the Steelers miss the playoffs. You have to put that into consideration if you are a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. And look, I think you look at Baltimore. I think they're absolutely winning the division. The Ravens have a favorable schedule in front of them. They have the Steelers twice. I think Baltimore's going to beat Pittsburgh twice. I think you look at the ways the Steelers are playing. They're in the bottom 10 in total offense. They're in the bottom 10 in total defense. And I picked the Steelers to make the playoffs because I thought their defense was elite. That did not turn out to be the case, and Aaron Rodgers being the quarterback with all this, sure. So he can manage any type of game he wants. He can do all that. He has the accolades. He's going into the Hall of Fame. But how the Pittsburgh Steelers address the quarterback situation this offseason, what is the main reason why the Steelers are the team that they are? That there was not a single ounce of time. And I said this on Instagram. I said this on Hooked on Sports after the playoff loss last year. The 2026 Week 1 starter for the Pittsburgh Steelers is not on the roster. They had a great opportunity to draft Jackson Dart. They had a great opportunity to draft Tyler Shuck or Shador Sanders. They had an opportunity to have those quarterbacks on their team, and they decided to pass up on the quarterback, and they said, "Nah, we're good. Aaron Rodgers is coming to Pittsburgh, and that'll address all our problems." Now with the way the Aaron Rodgers has managed the Steelers to victories and not turning the ball over, so they're in a situation where if they want a quarterback, they're going to have to trade up in the draft, and it's gonna cost the Kings ransom to get one. Not to mention, I don't believe in any of the quarterbacks in this draft class other than Fernando Mendoza. I'm not a believer in Lenore Stellers. I'm not a believer in Garrett Nussmeier. I'm not a big believer in Ty Simpson. Fernando Mendoza, we will get to him in a second. I think is the only franchise quarterback that's coming out of college next year. So a franchise quarterback that can win games, that can carry teams to victory, like he did with Indiana last on Saturday. We'll get to that in a second, but and in a league that includes the Atlanta Falcons, in a league that includes the Carolina Panthers and the Cowboys and the Green Bay Packers, the Pittsburgh Steelers are the most inconsistent team in the NFL, and the latest example of that is the Chargers, debacle against the Chargers. So if you're, I just don't know how you can accept this if you're the Steelers, if you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, another dreadful result that I think is worth monitoring. The Buffalo Bills, they got spanked. They got annihilated. They against the Miami Dolphins. The Miami Dolphins, who just kicked Chris Greer out the door, following the debacle against Baltimore in Week 9, and this was just a total coaching flop. So that the Bills are coming off the high of beating Kansas City, and eventually the questions of dealing with prosperity were going to be asked in Buffalo, and there, of course, I grabbed the 9.5 points with the Dolphins against the spread. I mean, Dolphins plus 9.5 was one of the easiest bets of the week, because you think it's a division game, you think it's that you think you go to Miami, the Bills going from cold weather back to hot weather. But for the Bills to be totally unprepared, Josh Allen was dreadful. Sean McDermott couldn't coach his way out of a paper bag. So the technique and the tackling on defense was non-existent. And this is why I cannot take the Bills as Super Bowl favorites as long as Sean McDermott is the head coach. The Bills are 6-3. The Colts are 8-2. The Denver Broncos, I don't take the Broncos seriously. They're because of the quarterback play. They're 8-2. The New England Patriots have a 1.5 lead over the Bills in the division, and they already beat Buffalo in Buffalo this season. I just think the Bills' inability to get it done lies solely on the coach. And then you have the Atlanta game, and then of course, how the New England game transpired earlier in the season. I can't. I just can't. I know the people that have their love fest with the Bills because Josh Allen is a top quarterback. He was the league MVP last year. So you have talent on defense. They brought in talent on defense. Joey Bosa. They still have Ned Oliver and Russo and all that. But the inability to pay attention to detail is why the Bills can't get over the hump. And the Bills are certainly going to have to play road playoff games this year if they want to get to the Super Bowl. And by the way, in Sean McDermott's head coaching career, all with Buffalo, the Bills have played five games away from Orchard Park. They are 0-5 in those games. 3 of them against Kansas City, one where they had a lead against the Texans and blew it, and one where they lost to Blake freaking Bortles. Like I said, like, do you want me to try living in alternative reality? Do I want to make Bills fans feel good about themselves as being a top team in the AFC? Let me know. I don't know what to tell you. And that as long as the Bills keep falling flat in their faces in situations like this, then this team is going nowhere. Nowhere. Josh Allen's legacy might be compared to that of Dan Marino's. Dan Marino putting up all these incredible statistics. MVP season. Never won the big thing. Jeez, I mean the Bills are gonna make the playoffs, but that's not the standard. The standard for the Bills should be to go to the Super Bowl and win. I just can't. Now, on to some things in the NFC. Now, and we can look at the 3 teams that enter this week 6-2 in the NFC. Look at the Eagles, the Rams, the Seahawks. That they all won their games over the weekend. The Eagles go squeak past the Packers in a Monday night defensive battle. So the Seahawks blitzed the hell out of Jacoby Brissett and the Arizona Cardinals, and the Rams went into San Francisco and their offense pitched the perfect game and beat the living hell out of the 49ers. Stafford threw for 4 more touchdowns. He's now over 400 touchdowns for his NFL passing touchdowns in his NFL career. And the Rams are 7-2, who host 7-2 Seattle next week in LA. And it's going to be a huge game for both of these teams. And I see these 2 teams as the biggest threat in the NFC to the Philadelphia Eagles. The Seahawks have crushed the drafts in the last few years, adding pieces to what was a broken roster. Russell Wilson had just left Seattle, and the roster was a mess. And the Seahawks wound up being one of the better front offices in the NFL. That thanks to the leadership of John Schneider, who's been there now for 16 years. So and what Seattle is young, they're fast, especially on defense. So they can do things to disrupt the timing and the rhythm of the defense. Sam Darnold has been great. Jackson Smith and Jigba is probably gonna wind up being named first team All Pro wide receiver, and it's just incredible there. And then with the Rams, we look at Stafford, Nakua, and Adams. What he's been like. The running game has been great. Kyron Williams is having another great season. The defense coming together. And if it wasn't for the disaster against Philly and the game they should have won against San Francisco, if Kyler Williams did not have that fumble in that game, we'd be talking about the Rams as an unbeaten team. And right now, I still have Philly at number one. I as long as I see something with the Eagles that worries me, they're still going to be my number one. And I think the fact that the Eagles played a defensive type of game on the road in Green Bay against the Packers, a team that has a lot of talent with their skill players and the offensive line and all that, and they held them they shut them out until late in the fourth quarter. I think the way the Eagles won, I think is important, big picture, but because you could win any style of fight against anyone who you want to play. So that's why, in my opinion, it's the same in the top three as in my midseason power rankings last week. I have Philly at number one. I got the Rams at 2. I got Seattle at 3. And I think Lions of 4. And Tampa Bay is coming in as number 5 after their loss to New England last week. So those are the 5 on my list in the NFC. And if you're looking for AFC Super Bowl contenders, right now I would put Indianapolis at 1, but I do think the Colts will need to get the 1 seed if they want to go to the Super Bowl. I think you put Kansas City there, and the Colts and Chiefs are going head to head in a couple of weeks, right after Indianapolis comes off its bye week. Jonathan Taylor, by the way, 244 rushing yards and 3 more touchdowns. He now has 5 games this year with 3 touchdowns, which is completely insane. Given the scope of his career, and he powered the Colts to a bounce back win over the Falcons in overtime in Berlin on Sunday in the NFL Germany game. So you have to look at Jonathan Taylor as being in the conversation for league MVP. I think New England, how they were able to go on the road to Tampa and beat Tampa, that's another statement, another example of how Mike Vrabel has done such an amazing job, and I think when it's all said and done, Mike Vrabel is going to wind up being the coach of the year at this point. So I'm looking at that and stressing the positives from that. Kansas City is Kansas City. So I look at that. And then I kind of have to put Denver, as much as I don't trust them. I think they're number 4. I don't think the Broncos are going to. The Broncos have a huge game coming up against the Chiefs. I do not believe they will beat Kansas City at home this weekend. So I think I would put Denver at number 4. For the time being, and then Buffalo at 5. And I think that's that for the AFC. So that's kind of where I have my roundup for the NFL. Now, and I think the big story in college football had to do with that insane finish to the Penn State Indiana game at Happy Valley on Saturday. Down 24-20, so with no timeouts and the 2-minute warning already passed. Fernando Mendoza drives Indiana 80 yards down the field, capped off by one of the most amazing touchdown catches I've ever seen. So they're facing a 3rd and goal with 45 ticks left. Against Penn State, and Fernando Mendoza throws a pass over the middle, and Omar Cooper makes a leaping tiptoe touchdown catch. with 43 seconds left to give Indiana 27-24 victory. And if you saw it, the toe just stayed in bounds, and it was the first foot to get in, and Omar Cooper of Indiana made one of the most amazing catches I've ever seen. It was the catch of the year, one of the games of the year, and that allowed Indiana to survive by their chinny chin chins. And this is why you gotta love sports. And Fernando Mendoza, I think, had his Heisman moment. I think he's gonna wind up winning the Heisman at this point, based upon the season that he's having at Indiana, with Indiana being the incredible a sudden machine of a program after being in the wilderness for how it seemed like forever for them. So it's one of the unbelievable event, and it was really the big thing coming out of college. So with 3 weeks to go in the regular season before the conference championships come out, I'm going to give you the teams that I think are going to wind up in the CFP. And I think you obviously have the Group of Five the best Group of Five conference champion, and that's going to be North Texas. So right for the moment, so we could put that in. If Notre Dame wins out, especially if they beat Pitt this weekend, the College Game Day, ESPN's College Game Day is headed to Pitt for that Notre Dame Pittsburgh clash. If Notre Dame wins that, I think they'll wind up getting in because they've got Syracuse and Stanford, and both are going to be easy wins, I believe. So you think they'll be in? I believe with Virginia and Louisville losing at home to unranked opponents, that means the only way the ACC champion is going to be the conference's only representative in that. So whether it's Georgia Tech and all that, so you figure that. I think the Big 12 is going to be a one bid school as well. One big conference as well, and I think Texas Tech is good enough to get in, but if Cincinnati somehow win, or Cincinnati or Utah wind up winning the Big 12, both are long shots at this point. They got to get to the Big 12 title game, which that in itself seems like a long shot. I think that could be a bid thief. And I think you also look at teams that come out of the other big conferences, the Big Ten and the SEC. So right now, I'm ventured to think that you have Ohio State, Indiana, Oregon as givens. Although I think Oregon still has a little bit of work left to do to get to that point. I think you look at the SEC. I'm looking at Georgia, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Ole Miss as givens at this point. Maybe you get a second team in the Big 12. Maybe whether it's BYU and all that. BYU got smothered by Texas Tech over the weekend, so that really is a plus for Texas Tech. But but I think the three teams to watch for over the next few weeks, more than any other teams in terms of their CFP chances. I'm looking at Michigan. If Michigan wins out, and that includes the Ohio State game, get to 10 wins, I think they're gonna wind up getting in. I think but I think USC also has 2 losses like Michigan does, but they've got Iowa and Oregon next 2 weeks, and I don't expect them to win both games. So I think Michigan is a team to watch, especially if they beat Ohio State. but then I'm looking at going to be looking at two crucial games in the SEC's fight. I'm looking at the Texas and Georgia, a rematch of the SEC championship game from last year. If that goes Texas's way, or if Alabama loses again to Oklahoma, I think the door is open for the SEC to be a 5-bid school because Oklahoma's had 2 losses, Texas has had 2 losses, and last year the CFP did not bring in a 3-loss at large bid. That four teams of the 4 of the 7 at-large bids went into the tournament with 2 losses on the season. So this is obviously elimination time for Oklahoma and Oklahoma and Texas in their respective things. But if Texas does beat Georgia, I could see them beating Arkansas, and I think they can beat Texas A&M at home. Because remember, Texas was the #1 team in the country. A long time ago, they were the preseason #1 ranking. So if Texas gets in, I mean, they're going to be a team that nobody's going to want to face in the CFP, thanks to an elite defense. So that's where I am on that front. And there was also some big news in Major League Baseball as Cleveland Guardians pitchers Emmanuel Clase and Luis Ortiz were indicted on charges connected to a gambling ring over the week over the past couple of years, and the prosecutors from the said that the that Clase's involvement in gambling stretched all the way back to 2023, which ESPN's Jeff Passan says, quote, to throw specific pitches for balls so the gambler could place top bets and profits. That is beyond absurd for that, and it is such such a wild thing to look at because if you look at Clase's career, so he was one of the more talented pitchers the game has seen in a while, and he just threw all of that away. So because he couldn't resist gambling, so it is a dangerous precedent that's being set. So you connect this ring to this to the situation with Terry Rozier and Chauncey Billups and others. So that is a terrible look for Major League Baseball, and a bad look, especially for those for those types of players, which is the latest in a string of betting scandals that has rocked the sports right now. Now, MLB did make a step in the right direction on Monday, where sportsbook partners agreed to place a $200 nationwide betting limit on wagers on individual pitches, about that. So, and MLB was able to flag that and rightfully suspend Clase and Ortiz, but whereas in the NBA, they just let it go, and the FBI wound up investigating that too. So you kind of think that baseball's in a better direction than the NBA, given that the World Series ratings have blown out the NBA in recent years. So that is a lot for the baseball fan and the basketball fan, really, to really to take in here with all of this. So that's going to do it for this edition of Hooked on Sports. I will be back with my Week 11 preview show coming up on Thursday on this channel, on my YouTube channel, and if you and on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. So stay tuned. Stay tuned for updates on there, and then I'll be back with you for my Week 11 preview show on Thursday. So until then, this is John Flynn saying so long, and I'll be back here on the podcast next on Thursday. So long, everybody, and take care.